Hello and welcome back. This is Barrett from the C4 Cyber Club here at Cypress College. And in this video today, we'll be going over the Cisco Network Academy IT Essentials version 7, lab 3.1.2.6. And we'll be installing Windows, but specifically Windows 10 on a virtual machine using Hyper-V within Windows. So I'm already logged in here into the NetLab. I'm on PC1 running Windows 10. And very first thing, let's go ahead and just start up Hyper-V Manager. I'm going to search for Hyper-V down below. And we see this app open up. Now, if you are completely new to virtualization and virtual machines, you're probably thinking, what the heck is Hyper-V? So I'll give a little overview first before we get going into what a hypervisor is, which, Hyper-V is short for hypervisor. And essentially Hyper-V is Microsoft's hardware virtualization product. This is what will allow you to create virtual machines within Windows. And this is a nice image showing the difference between what's called a type 1 hypervisor and a type 2 hypervisor. Interestingly, running Hyper-V on your Windows machine at home, this is technically a type 1 hypervisor. And what that does is you can launch these virtual machines and they have direct access to this hardware layer. Now, you'll see that this is referred to as bare metal architecture. What this is usually like in the real world is a data center somewhere or a bunch of servers in these bare metal rack units. And then these are running virtual machines. So all of those virtual machines are accessing the hardware directly. There's much better performance this way. You see that these are just all in a rack unit. There's no keyboards or monitors or mice attached to these things. They're strictly being used for that pure hardware to run the virtual machines. And then when we look at a type 2 hypervisor, this is some of you may have heard of software like VirtualBox, or there's also VMware. So this is a very popular way to launch virtual machines on your system. But the thing that's different is that it's sharing resources with your host OS. It's sharing all of this hardware resources with your host OS. So not as good of performance as a type 1 hypervisor, but for all intents and purposes, for a lot of people, you can get pretty good performance. And the benefit here is that, you could run, if you're running Windows, you could run various Linux distributions create your own lab setups at home to learn all types of different operating systems. So, like I said, once again, Hyper-V that we will be working with today is actually a type 1 hypervisor. Okay, so let me go ahead and close these examples down, and we'll go ahead and get started into the lab. So we will come over to New, and we're going to create a new virtual machine. Okay, and then it could be good to read this if you're still new to virtual machines in general. This wizard helps you create a virtual machine. You can use virtual machines in place of physical computers for a variety of uses. Use this wizard to configure the virtual machine now, and you can change the configuration later using Hyper-V Manager. And then you'll see we have a list of items here that we're going to go through. So we'll go ahead and name the virtual machine. We'll just work along with the lab. It wants us to name it Win-10. And the cool thing with virtual machines, it's technically a file, And so you could host these on an external hard drive, because if you start to build like a lab at home, you'll find that the files are quite large, when you're working with entire operating systems. What we're going to do here, we're going to choose this third disk F drive. So this is looking like it's a completely blank hard drive at the moment. We're going to right click, choose new, create a new folder, and we'll name that Windows 10. See that outlined in the lab here on the right. Okay, and then with that highlighted, we'll just choose select folder. So we're telling Hyper-V this is where we want to install this virtual machine. I'm gonna go ahead next. You have options between generation 1, generation 2. Generation 2 is more up to date, newer virtualization features you see here. But for the lab, it wants us to go ahead and just choose generation 1. We'll go ahead and leave that selected, hit next. And you can allot different sizes of memory to your virtual machine. And you'll see coming up, we'll also allot an extra processor to that as well. So in this case, we'll type in 6144. That's 6,144 megabytes, or roughly 6 gigabytes. And now remember, I wish I'd kept that image up, but remember that since we're using this Type 1 hypervisor, it's utilizing that direct hardware. And we're gonna disable dynamic memory for this virtual machine. If we kept this selected, what that does is when it first boots up the virtual machine, it will start at this memory, about 6 gigs. But then if you're not using all of that, it will scale it down for you. But this way, with that deselected, the memory selection is going to be static. Okay, for connection, we're just going to select default switch. And this is an important section. This is where we're going to set the hard drive space. We'll just change that down to 25 gigabytes. Hit next. And we will be installing this from what's called an ISO file, an .iso. And you see it combined with this area for CD, DVD, ROM. Those of you in high school may have never even used a CD or DVD before. So in some cases, you are quite possibly used to these ISO files, but essentially what they are is a disk image of a CD or DVD or an optical disc. So this is what is going to hold the entire installation of the Windows setup. And we have that located in Toolbox, the ISO folder. And you see there is an Ubuntu image. That would be for Linux, but we're going to choose the Windows 10. Okay, so you see that it's referencing that ISO file. We'll hit next. And it just gives us a summary of all the options and choices we selected. Go ahead and press finish. Okay, so you see that the Win10 virtual machine was created here. The state, it is currently off. We're going to right click on that, come to settings. And this is where we're going to up the processor allotment here. So right now it's running on just one virtual processor. We're going to go ahead and increase that to 2. Press apply, and then press OK. And now we're ready to get started. So we're just going to go ahead and double click on Win10. That's going to launch a new window. And we're going to press start, turn this on. And you could probably see in the background here, just a moment. So now the state has switched to running. You start to see CPU usage. You see the assigned memory that we selected, and you also see the uptime. So we've already started this for 12 seconds. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and walk through the installation process here. You can also go full screen on that. If you ever wanted to go back to the other windows, you can just press that again to go back. Okay, so we'll keep the language on English. Press install now. Through different parts of this, the rest of this lab, I made pause and jump the video ahead because some of these installation sections you'll have to wait about, maybe 5 to 10 minutes or so. Okay, so we don't have an activation key, or a product key, I should say. So we'll just click down here. I don't have a product key. And we will install the Windows 10 Pro version. And of course, we will always have to accept the license terms. So click that checkbox. And for this, let's just go ahead and choose this custom install Windows only. That is good. Hit next. Okay, so this is a section will take a little bit. So I'm going to go and pause, and we'll meet you back here in a moment. Okay, and you may notice that once it restarts, you'll see this press any key to boot from CD or DVD, but make sure you don't actually press any key there and just let it boot up naturally. Okay, it's looking like the installation is wrapping up here, and now we will be able to go into the basic setup. Okay, so first thing we want to do is select our region. So we'll select United States. And we choose the correct keyboard layout, which will be US. And here we could just skip this. This is if you want to add a second keyboard layout. So since it's a virtual machine, it will not be connected to the internet. So we can just click, I don't have internet down here. And it's going to give you a screen telling you all about all the wonders of the internet, but we'll still continue with limited setup here. Okay, so who's going to use this PC? We will create a username of ITE user. Press next. Create a super memorable password. I'm going to do something very simple because keep in mind you will need to remember this when you go to log in. Once we're done setting this up, I'm just going to set a password of password, which I obviously do not recommend in real life situation, but just for an example. Okay, and then you have to set 3 security questions. So what is your first pet's name? Let's say his name was Fido. Security question 2, what was the name of the city you were born? Citiesville. And what is your childhood nickname? Let's say Cool Guy. Okay, and now activity history, we'll just go ahead and say no to this. Get help from your digital assistant. We'll go ahead and decline this as well. This is for Cortana. And finally, we come to the privacy settings here. I encourage you to kind of go through this just to get a feel for what type of information a standard Windows installation would collect on you, or what type of things are activated when you disable certain things. It gives you some more information on how that affects your Windows experience. And the idea is to select only what you need, for the activities that you're looking to engage in. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and hit accept. And we're pretty much wrapping up the installation and the setup here now. Okay, great. So we are done. In this display configuration here, the lab recommends changing this down to 800 by 600. This will basically resize the screen so you can kind of see how, okay, in the background here, we have our Hyper-V manager. We're kind of back in the original Windows environment. And then in this window here is our virtual machine. So we have Windows running within Windows. So here, hope you remember your password that you set. Mine was just password. Go ahead and log in. And success. We are now running a Windows 10 virtual machine using Hyper-V. So if you've been following along and doing this lab for CIS 190, just go ahead and take a screenshot of your virtual machine running on top of the Hyper-V manager and try and grab the date and time in the bottom right hand corner as well. So just grab that entire screenshot, and you see I've already done it here. You can just go ahead and paste that into your lab document, and this is what you will submit for your assignment. So this is basically just proof that you completed the lab and got that virtual machine up and running. Great. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one.